and as soon as we just got notification that the good general has dialed us back up, John Bachman, you have a question to begin this round with Mike Hayden.
I do. General Hayden, as ISIS continues to grow here, there's been a lot of speculation on where the funding source might be for this organization. There's been some fingers pointed in the direction of the Gulf states, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and elements of that nature. But as they continue to grow, one might think this might make it easier to track down some of the sources of this funding. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think you've laid it out pretty well there, John. Number one, I do think there's a lot of individual giving from the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, as you said. Second, these guys support themselves through criminal activity. They're not above kidnapping and extortion. And as you suggested before we went to the break, they just did a bank robbery. They've got maybe $500 million in the kitty now because of seizing the bank in Mosul.
And in addition to seizing all that money in Mosul, General, they've been getting their hands on all sorts of American munitions. I mean, or not only munitions, but our Humvees, all the stuff left behind there. So they have really stepped right in to fill the void. And a lot of people here, I guess it's the nature of what happens in America, a lot of folks don't realize there is a problem till suddenly it presents itself in such a graphic way. In terms of this commander-in-chief being apprised by our military and intelligence professionals, do you have every confidence that he understood what problems would await us with a failure to have any remaining presence on the ground there?
I can't help but think folks like me still in government would have pointed out, and look, this is all measured by risk. And what they would have pointed out when the president felt he had to go to zero for whatever reason, ours or Maliki's, that we were embracing significantly increased risk for our ability to put a governor, if that's the right word, put a governor on ethnic and religious tensions in Iraq. We were putting limits on our ability to influence the situation and shape outcomes there. But, the president seems to have been almost ideologically committed to zero. I mean, it's quite striking to me. As his Secretary of State and Defense were still frantic trying to get a SOFA agreement, when they failed, the president went out into the press room in the White House and said, we're going to zero, and it's a promise kept. And if you recall, in the third debate with Governor Romney, he explicitly denied that he was trying to keep troops in Iraq. So I think, well, let me just say, I don't think the president's heart was really in it. And since the president's heart wasn't really in it, and this was always going to be hard for Maliki, we didn't get a deal.
We asked Robert Gibbs, the press secretary, right after that debate about that exact thing, and you got the I guess the idea from Gibbs' answer that they did not have their heart in Iraq, and that their heart was more in Afghanistan. But I want to go back to the funding question with you, General Hayden. We recently saw the FBI's involvement with the Abu Khatallah arrests in Libya. And since the president seems to want to treat these types of investigations and procedures as a criminal investigation, a criminal arrest, do you see that the FBI playing a bigger role in trying to combat terrorism than what we already know they're doing, more than maybe what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I do. And look, we got a lot of tools in the toolkit. It's not a bad thing to use our law enforcement tools when they're appropriate. I think folks with my background would disagree with the current administration on some of the choices they've made, but law enforcement and the ability to make war, they're both good tools. They're both legitimate. Just when you want to use one at the expense of the other. We did the raid to get Abu Khatallah, but, there's no putting sugar on this. That was a rendition.
Right. We
went into Libya without the permission, without even the knowledge of the Libyan government, and grabbed someone. And so let's have the administration admit what it is they've done. That's, like I said, a rendition. Now, he's going to eventually get into the American court system, but I love the fact that it's going to take weeks. While we interrogate him without his Miranda privileges, the president gave up black sites, but in this case, he's kind of opted for a gray site, hasn't he? Battleship gray in this case, the USS naval ship New York.
General, before we let you go, reports that now ISIS has gotten to the border of Iraq and Jordan. Have you heard about that? What are the implications?
I've seen the press accounts. We need to be careful. These guys aren't 10 feet tall. They're playing in the Sunni area of Iraq. They show a presence. I don't know how long they can sustain that presence over the entire Sunni area of Iraq, and they have very limited capacity beyond the improvised explosive device to do much inside the Shia or Kurdish areas of Iraq. Now, on the other hand, I actually sat back last week and tried to assess the situation. I find it very difficult, politically or militarily, for me to imagine that the Iraqi government can actually retake the territory that ISIS has taken. And that's a very, very dark scenario.
And on that sober assessment, General, we thank you very much for your time. John Bachman, you mentioned earlier that the General's assessment's found on our sister website, Lignet, Lignet.
That's right.
.com.